Hello and welcome. RTS games, what makes them fun and successful? And do new game developers that try to make their own RTS go about things in the right way? This question and more do I set to answer in today's video. There are a number of new game developers that are looking to make the next new big thing RTS. We've got Uncapped Games, who are looking to make an unannounced game where David Kim from Blizzard is working. We've got Stormgate with ex-Blizzard alumni as well, being made by Frost Giant Studios. There's Zero Space, Tempest Rising, and all of those games are in one way or another derivative, and I say this not in a bad way, in a good way, inspired by, derivative of other RTS games that have been made before. Usually when a RTS game is being looked at for a matter of comparison, we're looking at one of the greats. Ask anyone what are their favorite RTS games and they'll probably come up with games such as StarCraft 1 or StarCraft 2, Command and Conquer, Red Alert, and that whole series with Tiberian Sun and everything, Warcraft 3, or Age of Empires 2 and Age of Empires 4. There are other niche-worthy mentions as well. I personally really enjoyed Dune Spice Wars from 2023. You've got the Spellforce 3 from, I believe, 2019. And there are other RTS games as well. Some people swear by the Dawn of War series and Company of Heroes. But they're all RTS in some way, though you cannot claim that they all have the same components of an RTS. One game will be stronger in the macro management and the economic aspect, and another game will have a better representation of combat. Everyone has different preferences and everyone has different desires for what a game has, but somehow they're all called RTS. Though again, you cannot claim that a game like Company of Heroes plays out very similarly to a game like StarCraft. So I've been hard at work thinking over the last days, weeks and months about what is the value of the word RTS. It is a genre, right? A genre of real-time strategy. But where does an RTS begin and where does it end? What elements of an RTS can you remove and still maintain the core philosophy of what an RTS is? What elements can you add to it and still have it qualify, in most people's eyes, as still being an RTS? Take Warcraft 3 for instance, a game that I didn't make, but I worked on it as if it's my life's work all the same. Warcraft 3 is an RTS game. Or is it? Advertised originally as an RTS/RPG hybrid, Warcraft 3 dispenses with much of the busy work of economic management and worker allocation, and instead has a much greater focus on the second hybrid part, RPG. With the heroes in the game, there's a shift away from the focus on the economy of gold and lumber, only two resource types to begin with, as opposed to Age of Empires 4 resource types. And lumber is more of a limiter and then an afterthought, whereas gold is the big resource manager, but has a very binary collection system with 5 peons in a gold mine and that's it. Maybe you take an expansion, maybe you don't, but you're just mining with 5 peons and then you pretty much don't look at it anymore. So with so little emphasis of the game in microing the peons in your gold mine, is Warcraft 3 really fulfilling the StarCraft-like-esque label of being an RTS? Well, where Warcraft 3 loses some of its elements in the economy management of your gold line, the gold acquisition is actually also possible via a myriad of alternative routes, where minerals in StarCraft can only come into your possession via salvaging bunkers in StarCraft 2, or actually just gathering minerals with SCVs and drones and probes. In Warcraft 3, the gold economy is a bit more extensive. You can sell the opponent's units with transmute and gain money. You can pillage your opponent's buildings as an orc. You can get creep gold when you kill neutral NPC creeps and get gold in that way. And you can also find and sell items. And when you spend the gold, it's not just on unit production structures and on units, but it's also spent on heroes, consumable items, permanent items, and so on and so forth. So where some of the complexity is taken away from the economy management of Warcraft 3's, worker allocation, it goes to upkeep management and the creep economy, and you'll still actually end up interacting with the resource gold in a number of interesting and meaningful ways. So Warcraft 3 is missing something and it gains something in return. So what are new game developers doing when it comes to reinventing the RTS genre? How are they making RTS games fun and successful? And are new devs getting it right? And who are they designing the game for? These questions and more am I looking to answer in today's video. And I look at, first of all, games such as Stormgate, and I can't really speak about what I saw from David Kim's game yet because it's NDA. But we look at games like Stormgate, for instance, and Zero Space, and we look at what is being done and how they are being approached. So what I'm seeing a lot right now is that these games try to take a highly successful game like StarCraft or Warcraft. They try to iterate on that formula, make their own version, and probably make it different enough so that they are not necessarily directly competing with the quality of the original game. Or perhaps that's not the reason. Perhaps they're being made differently in order to strike some new interesting formula and also to potentially attract more players. It is conceivable that any developer would like to have as many players playing their game as possible. And one thing that I hear over and over in the marketing speech of new developers, when there is such, I often hear about removing some part of Warcraft 3 or StarCraft 2 or StarCraft 1 or Age of Empires that was considered too difficult, daunting, tedious, or complex. And then supposedly by removing an element, it would become more broadly appealing to more different people. So then I started thinking, so who is it being marketed towards? I know what I want half the time or less. I'm trying to figure out more about what I want. I don't know what casual players want, because I guess I'm way too far away from being casual. It's like asking a man what it feels like to be a dog. I don't know. I'm not saying casual players are dogs. I love dogs. This is not a knock on casual players. I'm just saying it's like a different species almost. So then I realized, hey, I know what I want. I know what, on average, hardcore players want out of an RTS. And it's, by the way, if any devs are watching this, I know it's not easy to make games for hardcore players because we're quite demanding. Right? The bar has been set quite high with games like StarCraft and Warcraft. And first of all, UI, UX, then there's balancing, then there's good design, play and counterplay, longevity. There's many different elements that matter. But what do casual players want? In order to answer that question, I first need to find out what a casual player is. So I tried to find a casual player in the wild, and I was not able to do this. I believe the casual player transforms into a tryhard the moment I set eyes on them. One moment they're casual, next moment they're eye to eye with their favorite YouTuber, and now suddenly with all the information that was filled in their head, they have become aware. They have become pro. They have received too much useful information from the YouTube guide, and now they're no longer a casual. They are a wiki gamer. In order to learn, this is part of a joke, of course, but actually, it is not easy to find a definition of what a casual gamer is. I have tried to define casual gaming. What is a casual gamer? I came up with a couple of definitions. For instance, you have not played the game for at least 200 hours. So aka you're under 200 hours, right? That's pretty casual. And I thought you only play the game 2 hours a day, max. You see that probably my perception of casual is already kind of skewed. But, you know, we can modulate different conditions. We can come up with a list of things. Casual means bad, right? Casual player is bad player. If you're pro, you cannot be casual. If you're hardcore, you're not casual. If you have 10,000 hours in a game, you're probably not casual. If you play 8 hours a day, you're not casual, right? But can you be hardcore and bronze? If hardcore is the opposite of casual, then can you still be in bronze? And I think yes. There are Dota players that have 30,000 hours or 30,000 games, but they're still in Herald. But I can't say that someone with 30,000 hours is still a casual. So why am I trying to define what a casual player is? Because many new RTS developers feel that they can sell their game to more people if it's a one-time sell, or if it's a free-to-play game with live service components, they feel that they can have a larger player base with casual players involved, with the idea that casual players are more multitudinous, whereas hardcore players are niche. My definition of casual is, was initially, one of the definitions was relatively unambitious, relatively less time into the game, right? Doesn't think about it a lot, doesn't play it a lot. May finish the campaign and then quit. Or may play 10 to 50 hours and then quit. And then wait for a future update. I believe all of you watching this right now, with any of these points, someone will disagree with some of that. What I started to realize when I made my ultimate list of what it makes to be a casual player, and I posted it to my Discord, which is probably already not very casual. Here I am, an ex-professional RTS player that's now a full-time streamer, and I make a Discord, and someone liked my community enough to join the Discord, and then I ask, yo, who self-identifies as a casual player? I thought no one would say me, because it's already not very casual to be part of gaming communities and then be like interested in those games. But plenty of people did feel like they're a casual player, and when I ask, why do you think you're casual? They'll say things like, well, I only play a couple of games a week now in my favorite MOBA. But a MOBA already needs a lot of learning. The amount of learning you did to be part of a MOBA, I don't even know if you're casual anymore. Like, yeah, sure, you don't play a lot anymore, but there was a lot of learning involved in order to get there. So it is almost impossible to definitely come up with one meaning for casual. A lot of the times people feel like they're casual more than that they have a definition for it. Usually it means like you're not very serious about improvement, or you don't have a lot of time for the game. I think such ephemeral concepts are going to be most applicable to describe what someone, to describe how someone self-identifies as a casual player. Let's take myself as an example, for instance. I play Elden Ring, and it's my first ever Souls-like game. I am not Wikipediaing at all, right? I'm doing a blind playthrough.
Bye, have a beautiful time.
Elden Ring, no Wikipedia. I'm trying to ignore backseating, right? Or timeout. I'm okay not to min-max my playthrough. So I'm not looking for the best weapon. I'm not looking for the best way to do everything. I'm not being deliberately bad on purpose. I'm not getting hit on purpose, right? But casual doesn't mean intentionally bad. So everyone kind of has the idea that they would like to improve at games and not be deliberately bad. Though I think some people maybe are deliberately bad, or at least are willfully monomaniacal about following a certain playstyle. To make a little segue and we get back to this, there's a Warcraft 3 opponent that I play against on the ladder. I believe his name is Dibine Franz, and he's a German player that, or Austrian, I don't know, sounds German to me, that only plays Paladin rifles. And Paladin rifles has a strong counter by Undead Fast Expansion. So I don't think Pala rifles can beat Undead Fast Expansion, but he plays the same thing every time. So recently I met him and he says, yo, I've been training. And I'm like, but are you training the right thing, or are you still playing that bad strategy? And he's like, Paladin rifles for life. So he knows at least my opinion on it. He may agree or disagree. Of course, my opinion is more likely right than his because ex-pro and he's not. But not necessarily right. I've been wrong before. Even if he knows or believes it, he's still doing this. Either because he thinks it's easier to execute, he doesn't like scouting and reacting, he wants to be true to his values, he thinks it's a GigaChat build, he thinks it's most fun, he just wants to play this one build, he wants to see if he can push it to the limit, right? So he's not being deliberately bad, but he doesn't care enough about the meta or becoming a slave to the meta to play something better. that feels casual. But then the amount that he's playing every day, right? Watching streams, trying to improve, that part doesn't feel casual. So you see how there can even be kind of a dichotomy of different casualness and hardcoreness inside someone. So then I'm thinking, how do you make games for the casual player when you cannot even really define what the casual player is? A very important question. So I can't speak for everyone, what everyone wants or what casual players want. But I see new RTS games that are looking to eliminate tedious parts of the game of an RTS. So how do you take one of the best games of RTS ever, and how do you then strip away elements that are active detriments to your joy or active detriments to non-RTS players to get in? Because the way I see it, there's only two people in the world, two kinds of people. And I think you guys all know what there are. There's either RTS players, and then there's non-RTS players. That's it. You're either one or you're the other. So I'm an RTS player. And if you are an RTS player, you will either play RTS that is fun, or you won't play an RTS that is not fun. Those are your options. And RTS players know how hard RTS games are, how hard or not hard, and then they'll play them or not. Whereas non-RTS players do not play RTS because either they think it's not fun or they think some part is too hard or tedious. So when you start stripping away elements of an RTS in order to make them more accessible, I think it's very important that it doesn't take away the fun and that somehow you are succeeding in the part of converting non-RTS players to become an RTS player by transforming the RTS genre for them. I think this is a risky approach. I think it's a risky approach with the intent to make the game the game genre more universally acceptable, but you are at risk of losing your core base. I think it's a risky approach. If you strip enough from an RTS, there are several genres that now exist that are very far away from that. Tower defense, which strips away units and just keeps the towers and base building. You can even say something like Factorio is an RTS without combat, which can be tedious for some. There's things like City Skyline, right? You've got things like Frostpunk. You can strip away a whole bunch of things and end up with games that are far more casual, but yet do not capture any of the core fantasy and desires that main games have. And if you strip away other things, you get the MOBA genre as well. So does every RTS game need to have you be able to go pro? Absolutely not. I think the goal for an RTS should be, in fact, fun. I think it should be all about fun. So then we get to the next point of this talk. What is fun? How can you dispense unmitigated joy? Which game elements are indispensable? So let's take a look at some of the best RTS games there are and find out what is fun. But first, let's define what is an enjoyment factor of RTS so that we can understand what to touch and what not to touch. So these are some parts that I think are fun, but they are initial or transient enjoyment factors. I see a lot of fans of games talk about new RTSs and attributing some part of the game being fun to that game's unique power. For instance, one thing I see a lot in my community is people, and even outside of my community, is people that say, I like this new RTS because I'm looking for a game where APM is not as important, because either they're slow or they're old or both. APM is not as important. I want my game to be decided by the quality of my decisions. Very common sentiment, actually. By the quality of my decisions, not by my APM, not by extreme Asian-like APM expression, right? They happen to not be Korean, and so it's hard for them, right? I understand. So it's about the strategical decisions, but they still want it to be an RTS and not a turn-based strategy. Right? And I think there's no shame in evolving out of RTS enjoyment and then going to card game and turn-based strategy. It's already kind of happening to me. That's okay. But so long as you're in an RTS, the one way you can really make it not be about speed and APM, you can make it pausable. So Dune Spice Wars is pausable, but in multiplayer meta right now, that is not considered to be something you do. Hell, games already take an hour or two, so pausing just seems to add insult to injury. That's another part of a casual player's life. Generally, I think casual players are better served by games that can fit in an average type of human's life and not be like a 2-hour commitment like Dune Spice Wars. But it's going to be more suitable if you can play a 10-20 minute game, because the time where you can find solitude and quietude to play some games in an ever getting more complicated life with families and jobs and responsibilities, you're looking for that 10, 20, 30, 40 minute window where you can play some games. And if you know you might be tied down for an hour or two in a singular game, which might even be tough because, you know, matchmaking threw you a wrench or lemons, then that could be a bad experience for you. So I want to define and I want to separate initial or transient enjoyment factors, and I want to separate them from permanent enjoyment factors. And so the permanent enjoyment factors are going to be things that are good long-term for replayability. So what is a transient enjoyment factor? When you're discovering a new game and you're discovering its gameplay mechanics, that can be a lot of fun. But once you've discovered everything, once you've figured out the game, you know how everything works, then this ceases to be part of your enjoyment because you've already discovered everything. Unless there's new content, new unit drops, new hero drops, rebalancing, reworks, then you have to learn things again. So if you take a game like League of Legends, Warcraft 3, Dota 2, you get games where it could take you not hundreds of hours, but thousands or even tens of thousands of hours just to be bogged down, enjoyably so, in this part of the game. So when a game is deep and complex enough, this is something that will work positively for your game all along. And essentially every single game that is not an extremely derivative copy of a previous game is going to benefit from this. So while it is inherently and intrinsically transient, it can feel like a permanent buff to the game. Next, being able to play any strategy and making it work. This sounds like a very oft repeated desire for many people that follow me. And I see people say this about new RTS. They'll be like, hey, you know, I'm a StarCraft 2 player and Age of Empires 4 is coming out, and I wonder if it's going to be good, because what I'm looking for is a game that's not so figured out. Everyone playing the same meta, the same timings, and it's all about how fast you are and how well you execute the game and the strategies and how quickly you can rush someone. And that's not what I like from an RTS. I like it like back in Command & Conquer, and we build up our base and then we do the rocket attack or the plane strafe by, and you could like infiltrate your opponent's buildings and then sell them and so on. And you know, there was lots of different ways to play the game. You know why there were so many different ways to play the game? It's because people were bad. You were bad, your opponents were bad. It's because the game was new. That's why it feels like you could play any strategy and make it work, when really there was an optimal way to play. People just didn't know what it was. I played Torrents and Shamans. I played Mass Walkers. I played Mass Doctors. I played all kinds of things. Grunts and Catapults, Mass Air. I played 10 different strategies against human from 2003 to 2005 in Warcraft 3. Why? Because people were bad. But I was better than them. I was able to play, and sometimes the level gap was very small, right? Maybe some people were mechanically better than me, but because I was able to make a worse strategy work, now I say worse. Retroactively, I know it's worse. Back then, I'm just looking for builds in a relatively new RTS, right? It works because it's new. Accelerate any game, any RTS game, 10 hours into the future. Okay, 10 hours is a bit fast. I know we live in a rapid information gathering era. 10 years. Accelerate 10 years into the future without any change to the game. And of course, there will be one or two metas that exist. This is a transient enjoyment factor. If this is what you like, I recommend playing a new game for a week to 6 months and then just stopping. Because at that moment already, everyone is convalescing, is converging on the same meta, of course. So this is not an invalid enjoyment factor. It's super valid, right? But I don't think any game can promise you this, being able to play all the strats and making them work. Because of course there's going to be more and less efficient things of doing. Some RTS will come out somewhere in the next 5 years, and they're going to have 40 different units you can pick from, right? More than usual. And they won't all be equally good. There's no way that they can all be equally good. There's going to be overlap of certain design niches, etc. Next, a good campaign and single player. Very fun. And I guess some games really are built on having thousands of hours of single player enjoyment. Take Slay the Spire, for instance. And I think there's going to be other games like maybe Europa Universalis, the 4X game. I think people have a lot of fun with that single player. Right? So there are definitely single player games that you can play for thousands of hours. But on average, when we speak about RTS, it's not usually the AI that will give you thousands of hours of enjoyment. It's usually going online and playing multiplayer. People that do play only this and then stop supposedly actually make up 80% plus of the StarCraft player base as per Blizzard telemetry. Has been revealed through sources. So when we're looking at the sales revenue for StarCraft 2, over 80% just bought the game, played the campaign, maybe some single player custom games, never went on BNet. Well, they went on BNet because of Forced Online, but they never went to dig in their heels into the multiplayer. So that is essentially a casual player, which is a good customer for you if you are a developer that sells the game once. But if you want a gamer to be part of the online community and to be part of the live service game customer, uptake, like if your game is free to play, but your campaign is paid for, that works as well, I suppose. So if you want a large, bustling multiplayer matchmaker with lots of players, this isn't going to be the one that is going to be most important. But I do think a good campaign and story are very important lore builders for feeling like it's fun to be part of a community. You take a game like StarCraft, which has an impressive marketing machine behind it of promotional content such as cinematics and Blizzard storytelling and world building. And a lot of these new RTSs are going to be smaller scope and they cannot compete, perhaps, with the same level of world building that StarCraft and Warcraft have enjoyed. And that may end up hurting them down the line as well, because StarCraft 2 is also a very complicated game. But for some reason, so many people have played StarCraft 2. Why is that? How can StarCraft 2 at once be one of the hardest games in the world, but still be so popular with casuals? Right? You cheeky casuals, how dare you play such a hard game? Right? A very high APM requirement. But anyway, I digress. Let's finish the list. I will talk more about that later. So another transient enjoyment factor is being part of the community during the period in which the game has its largest concurrent player peak. That feels hype, right? Everybody's playing it, everybody talking about it, everyone making memes, everyone's making music about the game. That's fun. That's not going to feel the same in 10 years down the road, right? You will have a smaller, more niche community, but it could still be big depending on the size of the game. And then this is something I noticed a long time ago, but I'm actually not sure it's still true. New communities are usually more positive, right? Everything is growing. Developers are spending a lot of time on communicating with you. And then it's usually late stage player bases that are in decline that have more doom and gloom. But like I wrote here, I think new communities are rapidly catching up to adopting doom and gloom culture. There's already a lot of doom and gloom on the Stormgate subreddit, and that game isn't even out yet. So we are learning to get to that stage faster than before, to straight skip past the honeymoon period of a new game. But originally, fresh new communities generally are more positive. For instance, when Heroes of the Storm came out, it was the shining example of a MOBA that is not toxic compared to the toxic cesspools of League of Legends and Dota 2. Of course, I didn't have comparison material because I never played League and Dota, but HOTS was so positive. Everybody was happy, nobody was flaming, everyone was laughing, right? Now, HOTS still is less toxic than those two, but not as toxic free as it once was, because a rising community has one mood and a declining community has another mood. So those are some transient enjoyment factors that I do not think should generally be attributed to a game's longevity. You should not say that these are the reason why another game is better. It may just be newer. For instance, many of these were really important for me to enjoy Age of Empires 4, which I think is a very great RTS. But a large part of my joy was discovering the new gameplay mechanics, trying strategies and making them work, being part of the community during its peak, and fresh new perspective and community feeling and so on. Right? A lot of this was important to me when playing Age of Empires 4 as well. So what are some of the more long-term and permanent enjoyment factors? So you've got, generally, you can have a game with impressive soundscape and visual landscape. You can have replayability. Replayability through a long road of improvement of various skills. The feeling of being able to improve at something. It's not necessarily about getting actually good, like objectively good, but just feeling like you're trying to improve is very fun in an RTS. Improving at battles, improving at economy, management. You've got the fantasy of a growing base made according to your own design. For beauty and efficiency and the safety and base defense. I think a lot of people like building up their base in StarCraft 1 or Warcraft 3, protecting against run-bys, making it look pretty, lines of moonwells, lines of ancient protectors, and so on, right? Then you've got combat being a satisfying experience, containing skill expression, having a time to react both in a macro perspective, strategically, and also tactically, being able to respond to banelings running at you and splitting before they blow up your whole army. If you can't react on time, then that's not very fun. Your whole army is gone. And if you can't react strategically because someone is building the super unit and it has no counter, then that's not very fun. And you've got good diversity in games through RNG and variance, where StarCraft is a mathematician's dream about precise timings and having the numbers just work out every time. Games like Warcraft 3 and Age of Empires have more RNG. In Age of Empires 2 and 4, there's the RNG and the variance of the map being semi-randomly procedurally generated. And in Warcraft 3, you can have different items and even different damage ranges expressed. And that creates unique challenges and problems that can make every game feel different, and that promotes replayability as well. Then you've got actual diversity in games because of well-layered strategical and scouting options. So besides having one Superman unit you can just mass, you could have a variance of more than one build because the meta is really solid. There's been rebalancing patches by the developers. There's great underpinning design that creates some form of rock, paper, scissors, which actually allows you to counter the Superman unit with the Kryptonite and then the Kryptonite with something else, and so on and so forth. So you cannot afford to mass one unit because the counters are too hard. Immortal counters the Siege Tank counters the Hydralisk, but the Hydralisk counters the Immortal. It's good, right? And then you've got game lengths that can fit in the normal leisure gaps of a human's normally structured life. Humans that have responsibilities, families with short windows of time for quietude, finding joyful solace in immersive gaming enjoyment. So these are all really valuable long-term enjoyment for an RTS. And we can get down to the nitty-grittier, but in order to do that, I would like to look at what some of the best RTS games are. Now, I must say at this point in my thoughts about what casual gamers are, how to make RTS more attractive to different players, both the casual and the hardcore alike, and trying to pin down what makes it so fun to play RTS games, I am recognizing that it is not easy to make an RTS game. It's difficult. It's easier to criticize them than it is to make them. Therefore, I will continue criticizing them instead of making them. And here are some of the games that I think are among the best RTSs. But it does not it does not constitute a full list of games that are great RTSs that came out in the last 25 years. There's others such as Company of Heroes, Dawn of War, but the reason I didn't include them in the list is because I've never played them. So I cannot as easily talk about them with expertise. So I'm focusing on these. And it should also be noted that many of the games that are coming out or going into early access, like Tempest Rising, Stormgate, Zero Space, and also Uncapped's new game. I don't know what it's called yet. All of these games draw from these, and they also draw from games like I said, honorable mention, Company of Heroes. So these are all RTSs, but they all are labeled differently. Sometimes people call this RTT, real-time tactics. I also like to call them beacon control RTS. Or you can even say Relic RTS, because the studio Relic, they always make RTSs like this, like Dawn of War and Company of Heroes. So you can call it Relic style. Then of course, Warcraft, StarCraft 1, Warcraft 2, they are Blizzard-like RTS. Or you can call them StarCraft-like. Blizzard style, right? But even Warcraft 3 is only somewhat StarCraft-like. So even that subdivider label does not fully work. Like I think, for instance, Stormgate is more StarCraft-like than it is than Warcraft is StarCraft-like. So when new RTSs come out, they have a choice. Start from one of these games, try to emulate their success, but remove some of the challenges that made them daunting to non-RTS players. So what you could do is you could remove all the RTS elements of StarCraft, remove the combat, remove the economy management, remove the APM requirement, and replace it by one guy with a gun that can build sky structures, and then make it a kind of battle royale. So now you've made it into Fortnite, and now it's a different genre, and it is not so daunting anymore to people that don't like RTS, but it is attractive to someone that likes Fortnite. A stupid over-exaggeration, of course, but essentially they are looking to tap into non-RTS players by removing some of the genetic code of an RTS. And like I said, I think it's risky. So I recently saw this video from the Uncapped's new game, and there are some parts that are interesting to look at. So here's a part of the video from Uncapped Games, who are making a new RTS. They call their title Redefining the Game, a paradigm shift for the RTS genre.
In a way that's a bit more like manageable and approachable, so you can focus more on decision making rather than the raw, actions component of it.
Even when I first started my career at Relic, there was this thought that RTS is just hardcore, right?
So if RTS is hardcore, right, in a way, just thinking about that, how come so many people play StarCraft 1, StarCraft 2, Warcraft 3 that are so bad? What does it mean, hardcore or casual? Of course, you can be hardcore and be bad, right?
And it's hardcore, so we gotta make it more accessible.
This thought, right? It's hardcore, so we gotta make it more accessible. He's saying this was a thought at Relic Studios when he was working at Relic. Is there any sense in that? If something is hardcore, it needs to be made more accessible. I look at a game like Elden Ring. Is Elden Ring an easy game? No. If you're new to Elden Ring, does the game hold your hand and tutorial you properly to understand everything? No. Why is everyone saying yes? Yes, Elden Ring is an easy game. No, it's not. I think Warcraft 3 is an easy game. Right? I think Warcraft 3 is very simple. Look, how do you start in Warcraft 3? Let's say if you don't know anything about the game, you start, you've got workers, you've got a UI card that says build. You can then build things. Every building says what it does. You can then build it, and then you can make units, and then you can go fight your opponent, or you can fight creeps. It's extremely accessible, Warcraft 3. So is StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2. It is not complex to get into StarCraft 1. It's not complex to get into Warcraft 3, and it's not complex to get into StarCraft 2. And the campaign tutorial actually teaches you how to box select and how to select things. And you don't need proper control groups to do any of it, right? You can control units without understanding all the UI UX. And you can play Warcraft and StarCraft fully offline if you want to, without ever playing multiplayer. But if you were to play multiplayer, you would be, in theory, playing against someone else that's just as bad as you. None of it is difficult to get into. And I feel like Elden Ring is pretty much the same. In Elden Ring, you can just start. It's true, it is accessible in that sense. You can just start, pick up a sword and start hitting things. But in Elden Ring, there is no easy mode AI, right? Every opponent you meet are going to be more challenging than yourself. Like every AI monster in Elden Ring is more difficult than a multiplayer player in an RTS that's just as bad as you. If the matchmaker works and if everyone is equally bad, a multiplayer game of an RTS makes it just as easy for you as you are for them. Do you see what I'm saying? You disagree. How could you disagree? Look, I am physically how strong? What do you think? Is fighting hard? No, you just punch someone, right? But if I fight someone that's equally strong as me, the same, I fight my clone, it's 50-50. Now if you ask me, can you lift a car? I can't lift a car. But in Elden Ring, when you step out into the plains, there's immediately the tree sentinel. That's a car. If you put me up against another Elden Ring player that's just as new as me, that's easy. That's 50-50. It's the multiplayer part of a game that makes it as hard or as easy as it could be. So this is why I think that a game can be accessible and not difficult at all, even though it can still be really, really deep. Defining a game as being hardcore and we got to make it more accessible, I'm not sure it really works for me. Because I think Elden Ring is a hard game, but everyone says it's easy, right? But I think it's really hard because all the monsters are more strong than me until I finally learn how to beat them. The reason RTS games feel hard is because people that are new to the genre are playing against multiplayer opponents that have 10,000 hours in other RTS games. That's why it's hard. Not because the AI is hard to beat.
Or more approachable. And in order to do that, the only way is to reduce the army count or slow down the game pace kind of thing, right? We talked a lot about like this difference between there has to be, from a competitive player point of view, player that is good at the macro side of things, which is like building things really well, and then that's how you win games. And then players who are good at the micro side of things, which is people who are controlling what they have. Like they don't have as much as the guy who is good at macro, but they can control these guys really well. So that's how they pull out their wins. And it was a thing that existed in StarCraft 1, and we wanted to bring that over to StarCraft 2. Because there were a lot of improvements like multi-building selection, unlimited unit selection, etc. It made that macro part a lot easier in StarCraft 2. So in order to combat that at the time, we brought in these, I guess, macro mechanics. So for the Terran, you have to constantly like drop these mules on the...
So basically by providing new UI and UX and quality of life improvements, by allowing people to do multiple unit selection, the macro part became too shallow, too uninteresting, and that's why they brought in Mules, Chrono Boost, and Queen Larva Inject. So by removing the part of the game that they thought is tedious and difficult and daunting, they ended up with a shallower experience that they then tried to artificially make complicated again. That's what he's saying about the process of SE1 and SE2, and I think everybody knows that that's why it was done. Right? So This is actually happening in a lot of the new RTS games. Zero Space, for instance, you don't have workers that walk around by themselves anymore. They just stay put and they auto-produce. And so the question, I guess, is for you and everybody that's listening, and for myself, is it fun to do worker management and economy management, or is it better when it's automated? So that leads me to the next part of my video, which is what makes every game fun. So first of all, when we're looking at these games, I need to say that all of them are very complete games. They're complete in terms of excellent sound and visual design. They have a level of polish, they have cohesive art design, mood, ambience, atmosphere, what have you. I mean, there's no perfection in art, right? They're all just great in these regards of all these senses. The game devs all did UI and UX a little bit differently, but they're all good enough. It can be improved, but it just works. And so besides all of those, the things that just work graphically, storytelling, etc., what part of gameplay makes all of them so great? Looking to find indispensable aspects of an RTS that should not be cut, just to find the elusive casual player and try to appeal to them. So, what makes everything good? So, I look at StarCraft 1, and what makes StarCraft 1 fun for you, fun for me, fun for anyone? This is what I end up with. I think these things are fun. You may have your own things you like about StarCraft 1. I like making workers repeatedly and setting them to work. I like putting units and buildings to work, planning my base, building extra barracks, trying to anticipate how many barracks I need. I like the stress of needing to execute faster, knowing there's always something else I could be doing, knowing that I can improve my play if I just get to the next thing faster, sending my units from here to there, producing faster, being more economical with my workers, etc. Planning out my base. I like the pacing of combat. There's small and large scale battles, and because the units can't blob together too easily, even large drawn out battles take some time to process. There's relatively short time to kill in StarCraft 1, but the units are more spread out. There's little micro opportunities to improve the efficiency of your units, but you can also have larger than life battles. And I feel like the game captures that really well. You've got niche units that do niche things that can lead to very rare circumstances, like queens infecting command centers and then making infected command centers and training infested Terrans, queen broodling parasite, ghost lockdown spam on battlecruisers, plague, mind control. There's a lot of cool niche units that don't see play every time, but can become very spectacular when used occasionally. I like that the workers are vulnerable and that they're a valid attack harassment strategy in order to take them down. That the underpinnings of the economy lie in those workers, and that when the workers get attacked, they can move and dodge and be elsewhere and so on. So when you take away some of the busy work that makes StarCraft 1 hard, and some may say tedious, you are ending up with the removal of some options of play. Once you take workers that can walk around and be in places, and you go the direction of, for instance, Godsorn. Godsorn is a new RTS where workers automatically, when they don't have a task, go towards the temple and start praying. So they go to the center of your base, and then they just go there. Right? They start praying there. You can allocate them to different places, but they have a default go-to. When you have a game like Zero Space, the workers are kind of like in a plant pot. There are 4 plant pots, I call them, not their term, around your command center. And in each, they automatically grow the plants, your workers, automatically. You don't train them, it just happens. If you make a new base, it starts spawning plant pots around the new base, and those pots all start growing their own workers. So it's all happening automatically. By taking away part of your focus on your main base and on your worker development, you can put all your effort towards thinking about doing combat. What makes Warcraft 3 fun are the following for me. Items and variable hero power levels create a variance in gameplay that is different every time. Play 10 times the same game and you'll have one time claws of attack and another time you'll have rings of protection. There is less worker management, which allows you to think more about the battle. But the economy management is done, as I mentioned before, through other aspects as well, such as creeping and upkeep management, which still makes it interesting. The engine is just smart and dumb enough to create interesting mechanics, such as surround mechanics and body blocks. It's fun when your heroes get strong and powerful and big, and they start becoming more strong than units that they previously had to fear. Level 6 is pretty rare to get, and when you get there, you get an extreme power level spike that can be really fun to play with. The units are very asymmetrically balanced, just like in the StarCraft games, and there's special deep interactions between units and heroes. Right? I only have to mention a couple. You've got a raider, he throws in a snare that makes someone rooted in place, but that unit is a druid of the Talon that transforms into a crow, and mid-transformation, it disjoints the ensnare projectile. So you can dodge the ensnare by transforming. That's a super interesting micro and play and counterplay interaction that you don't discover immediately, but you can discover down the line, and it will always remain a relevant and fun skill expression. What did I enjoy the most about Age of Empires 4? Age of Empires 4 is so different from Warcraft 3, actually. Where Warcraft 3 is more focused on battle, I feel like Age of Empires 4 is less focused on battle. It's very focused on economy management. You've got 4 resource types that have to be extensively balanced. I find this super fun. You've got a lot of different build order customization, where Warcraft 3's build orders are extremely basic. Age of Empires 4 build orders are extremely extensive. And although Warcraft build orders are basic, you can at least do a lot of planning around creep routes, and that is essentially part of your build order, because there are so many different creeping routes possible. And the fights against creeps are interesting optimization that is actually very similar to the same fantasy you get from Elden Ring. In Elden Ring, you're constantly learning how to more efficiently defeat PvE. And that's what creeping is in Warcraft 3. If you don't like that part of Warcraft 3, then you may not like that part about Elden Ring either. Of course, implementation is a little different, but the concept of beating well-crafted AI can be pretty damn interesting, good for thousands of hours of enjoyment. And that's what you do in Warcraft 3 as well. You don't have that in Age of Empires 4, but a lot of that energy will be put into allocating your workers around gold, wood, stone, and food resources. That is very cool design. Then you've got 8 sieves when the game came out, more by now, 16 I think. And they all have their mini games like standing on sacred sites, relic retrieval. You've got Rus doing the hunt. They have to hunt the animals to get bonus gold. Mongols have pillage. Then you've got HRE are like especially incentivized to get the relics. Delhi want to go on the sacred sites. They all have something, right? English are good at farming. So they're working on their own little mini game while still competing against other civilizations. There's multiple victory conditions, which is you can stand on the sacred sites. You can also eliminate an opponent. Was there a third victory condition, or am I crazy? Oh yeah, a wonder. You can build a wonder and defend it. And then there's also micromanagement of battles. And it is relevant, but it is not as important as in some other games. All of these games, as the game goes on, is going to have APM requirement. None of these are games where you say, well, APM doesn't matter. It's always going to be part of the game. With all this in mind, I am personally always fearful when I hear new developers of new RTS talk about things that these games got wrong, because they're also trying so hard to emulate these games. Like I said, it's not easy to come up with new RTS games and new RTS concepts. Many games that did come up with new concepts, wildly new concepts, are not even considered as an RTS multiplayer game. They are already successful games by themselves that do not try to compete for a piece of the pie here. The reason we look at these games is because they are at once looking to build upon the legacy of these type of games, of the Blizzard greats, the Westwood Studios, and the Age of Empires series. They're looking to capitalize on the player base that already exists around these without, becoming some niche single-player game. They want to be a multiplayer game that builds upon the successes of these while trying to make it more approachable and remove some difficult elements. There was a very interesting discussion here on Reddit. There was a post here on Reddit, on the Stormgate Reddit, by Vinny Vidivici. He said, "We need more skill expression in Stormgate." I saw a lot of posts from people suggesting how Stormgate should remove or water down traditional RTS mechanics to appeal to MOBA players and casual players. The peak was people suggesting automated control groups and automated build orders. Here's my take. I noticed Stormgate already feels a lot more like a simplified spiritual successor of SE2, and this is the wrong direction. Other competitive games like Dota, League, and Counter-Strike 2 are so popular not because they're easy, but because casuals can play them with friends. I agree with this. I don't think StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2 are easy. They are, if you want them to be, very difficult games. But I do think they're easy to begin with. The reason they're hard is because there's so many hardcore players. Playing against hardcore players is hard. Period. Right? It doesn't matter how hard or easy the game is. Hardcore players and skillful players will always be better than casual players and noob players because they put in the time. So no matter how easy you make a game, someone is still going to beat you at it because they're better than you. So that's why I think it's wrong to make games easier. I have seen some incredibly difficult games being heralded as the next best thing since sliced bread. There's people that recommended for me to play Factorio. They thought I was going to love it. I think it's a very difficult game. People love that game. It has so many good reviews, right? You just need to learn the game. I think it's super hard. Dota 2, so hard. And hard to get into as well, but it's so good. Elden Ring, I think it was very difficult to get into as well. Difficult game, but so much fun. I think even casual players are not afraid of hard games. I don't think you need to be talented to eventually get good. You just need to try. And a lot of games that people are very hype about are just difficult games as well, I think. So you can still have a good time with your friends while getting your ass kicked in the game. No amount of watering down an RTS will make it appeal to casuals since they will still lose about 50% of the games. That's my whole point, right? That's exactly my point. Multiplayer games will always strive for you to have 50% win rate. You don't need to be good to enjoy a game. You only need to enjoy a game to enjoy a game. So stop trying to make it easier because it doesn't matter how high you are on the ladder. You will always be worse than someone else. You can be perfectly happy in a MOBA or an RTS being bronze or silver. Of course, I don't know what that feels like, but I know you can be happy there. Just embracing your level and then being met with players that are equally good as you should be totally fine. Stormgate is described as a Blizzard-style RTS, which for me stands for a good mix between complexity and mechanical difficulty. Warcraft 3 has more complexity than StarCraft 2. True. StarCraft 2 is mechanically more challenging. True. Stormgate currently feels like less complex than StarCraft 2, but with fewer mechanics than Warcraft 3. But for the core audience interested in competitive RTS, these things are important. Yes, I think that makes it fascinating. I think a lot of people that self-identify as being a casual player are actually more nerdy than they give themselves credit for. And esports also needs to be exciting to watch, and for this we need players to have skill expression. True. Big true. So then you had a reply from Ray, and he said skill expressions comes from there being impactful decisions that you can make with rapid and meaningful input. The more decisions you can make, the more skill you can express. Pressing lots of buttons is not decision expression unless there's impact to each of those actions. True, but there is skill expression to speed. But it's true that it is not skill decision expression when you press lots of buttons. If 5 actions are required to make a decision that could easily be made with 2 actions, the game is artificially adding a mechanical barrier that's more about clunkiness and less about skill. This part I would actually like to come up with a thought experiment for. Say, for instance, that in 99% of StarCraft 2 games, I, as a Protoss player in Heart of the Swarm, would go to 66 probes and then stop, with minimal or no stops in my probe production. All I decide is when I build the Nexus. Then wouldn't it be a quality of life change to artificially lower the mechanical barrier of making probes by having 3 buttons? 1 button, produce automatic probes until number input here, 66. Button 2, pause automatic probe production. And button 3, resume automatic probe production. That would be a mechanical lowering of barrier that would basically achieve what I'm doing pretty much every game anyway, autocast worker production. And many RTS games will actually allow for automatic production. I don't like it. I know some people are gonna like it or be okay with it. I personally don't like that at all. I think there's a real risk of automating the crap out of an entire game. And I think that's why games on mobile exist, like AutoQuest. Alright, I think that's all I have to say on the topic for now. I'm curious to hear whether you self-identify as a casual player. And as a casual player, which part of the game do you think is most fun in your favorite RTSs? And what kind of RTS do you hope that people make focused on what part of the game? I will continue to try out all these games that are going to be coming up, and I will continue to see what parts I find fun of them and whether I feel like they're worthy to deep dive into and to put my teeth into and to try and really figure out these games. Thanks for watching. Good talk. See you next time.